Good morning. Today is Wednesday, April 21st, 2021, and welcome to the April meeting of the Lextran Board of Directors. My name is Fred Combs. I'm the Director of Planning, Technology, and Community Relations. Due to the COVID-19 pandemic, state of emergency, and Governor Beshear's executive orders regarding social distancing, this meeting of the Lextran Board of Directors will be held via video teleconference pursuant to Senate 150, as signed by the Governor on March 30th, 2020, and Attorney General Opinion 20-05, and in accordance with KRS 61.826, because it is not feasible to offer a primary physical location for the meeting. I'd like to introduce to you the chair of the Lextran Board, Mr. Christian Motley. Mr. Motley, the floor is yours.
Thanks, Fred. Good morning, everybody. Let me do a quick roll check. Just give me a shout or a thumbs up. Adrian? I guess it helps if I can see your shout or heads up. Are you still on, Adrian?
She's there. Don't know if she can hear us.
Can you see me now, Adrian? Oh, might want to shoot Adrian a quick note. Make sure our audio is okay. But I see you. Rick? Rick is on. George?
Yes.
Present.
Jamie?
Here.
And Harding?
Here.
We will start with just a quick check to see if there's any public comment on agenda items. There's no public comment. We'll move to meeting minutes from last month's meeting. Is there any questions or any concerns? If not, we'll open the floor for a motion to approve the meeting minutes.
Christian, I sent Jill a minor typo that I assume was corrected.
It looks correct here.
I can't see the minutes.
Which section was it in?
It was section 7. And Byron's name is spelled incorrectly.
Oh, yes, we got that corrected.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thanks, George. Is there any other additions, corrections?
No, I'll move to approve the minutes. This is Harding.
George,
Is
second.
there a second? All in favor, say aye.
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 Anyone opposed? Motion carries. For the chair's report, I don't have any big notes to highlight, but I do notice that Byron Robinson is on for his first meeting. I just want to give him the opportunity. Number one, welcome you to Lextran. Folks will know that he recently joined as the Assistant General Manager. I want to give you an opportunity to quickly introduce yourself. You want to take a couple seconds?
Good morning, everyone. My name is Byron Robinson. As Christian said, I'm the new Assistant General Manager here for Lextran. I have over 16 years experience in transportation, 6 of those being when I was in the Air Force. I started my career out as an operator. I was a road supervisor, dispatcher, coordinator. Worked my way up through different levels of management. Just moved to Lexington on Saturday. Excited to be here. Have my furniture coming this weekend, so the next weekend I plan on riding the buses around to learn my way around the city, and look forward to working with everybody.
Welcome. Happy to have
Thank
you,
you.
Byron.
Thank you.
Welcome. Glad you're here.
And I forgot about the move, so welcome to Lexington as well.
And thank you.
And as you can see, I think I might have mentioned this in our last meeting. It seems like Byron might have had every job in the building.
That was the plan.
Good.
Yeah. Excuse me. With that, I think we'll move to the, that completes the chair's report. We'll move on to the employee recognition. Jill, you there?
I'm here. Can you hear me and see me?
We can.
All right. Well, good morning, board members and other folks that are on the call today. I am in our boardroom. Haven't been here in a while. I'm going to have some folks here with me today. Wanted to quickly do a recognition of some of our employees for an event that happened recently. Not this most recent weekend, but the weekend before, on Saturday, April 10th, at approximately 8 o'clock in the morning, our operator, D. King, was driving his outbound bus. He arrived at the end of the line and opened the door. And a young man, a young boy actually, boarded the bus alone. Dressed inappropriately for the weather, it was cold, and without an adult. D quickly realized that he was by himself, and there was no adult around with him. He contacted our dispatcher, Rachel Ferguson, and our street supervisor, Eric Michaela, responded. Together, they acted with care and expediency to assist a young man in a situation that, without Lextran, could have gone very poorly. The following day, April 11th, Sunday, at approximately 6:40 in the morning, our operator, Vivian Davis, was driving the same route. She arrived at the end of the line and opened her door. The same young man boarded the bus, still dressed inappropriately for the weather. He was the only person at the stop by himself. Ms. Davis responded appropriately again with care and compassion, just as D. King had the day before. Gave the little boy her coat and contacted our dispatch office, where she talked to Ben Grimes, who was acting in the dispatch role and street supervisor role that day. I'm so proud of all of these employees that I'm gonna get choked up. Watching the video was hard. And this is also embarrassing. But many of you also know that I have a 3-year-old boy that is mine. And so that brought this situation very close to home. But I'm so proud of these operators for how they responded, especially since the following weekend, that bus shelter was hit by a car. And so that brought it closer, that had these folks not been there with this little boy at the time that they were, and had Lextran not responded, things could have gone very, very poorly for this young man. And so I have all of these folks here with me today, and I would like to present each of them with the General Manager's Certificate of Commendation and a letter of recognition. D. King, would you come up? Give you a fist bump because we can't shake hands right now. There you go. Thank you. Thank you. I have John, of course, our Director of Risk Management, and Jason. Jason is Dee's boss. He's the department head in operations. Rachel Ferguson, acting in the dispatch role. Thank you, ma'am. Yes. Eric Michaela, acting in the street supervisor role. Those were the members of our team that responded on Saturday, April 10th. And as I said, the same situation happened the very next day on Saturday, April 11th. Our operator that day was Miss Vivian Davis. And Mr. Grimes was pulling double duty that day. On Sundays, that early in the morning, Ben was acting as both our dispatcher and our street supervisor. Thank you, sir. Appreciate you. Ben, thank you. I often say to people that our Lextran operators and our Lextran street supervisors and folks out there are eyes and ears in the community. They see things that other people don't ever see. This situation perfectly illustrated that, and I'm so proud of each of their response. I'm so proud of all the work that we do here, and I'm proud of you for all serving on the Lextran team, and just appreciate your effort. Thank you all very much. While we get some photos, I'm going to switch over back to you, Mr. Motley, and you can turn it back to the agenda, and I promise to hold it together for the rest of the meeting, and we will get into the report in just a moment.
Thank you, Jill. Really incredible. Thank you all. Again, I can't say it any better than Jill just said it. We're just really grateful for our folks working on the front line. Let's go into the performance report and financials. Is that you, Fred?
Yes, just one moment. Talk about tough acts to follow. Yeah, that again, amazing work by our team. So let's jump into the March 2020 presentation of the performance report. Our mission statement: we serve people in our community with mobility solutions. I don't know that I've seen a better example of us following through that mission than what we just watched. So some highlights for March of 2020, we celebrated Transit Driver Appreciation Day. We had boxed lunches, we had thank you notes, we had games for staff. We did lawn letters. So you see in the picture in front of our building, we had a thank you to Lextran employees for a great job. You know, the past year has been difficult, as we all know. You know, really happy to celebrate that day with them. And speaking of the past year, we did, our staff did a training course titled Getting Through This Challenging Time Together. And that was, you know, we had a chance to share some techniques and some strategies to help us meet the challenge of the day and of the moment. So it was a very interesting training class. Also in March, we did our May service improvements virtual meetings. We had 419 engagements, 85 clicks on Facebook. We had 192 impressions, 29 views on YouTube. And that's something, you know, that's the second service improvements public meeting that we've done virtually. Pleased with the engagements and the participation we've gotten. We're going to try to keep that momentum going moving forward with other public meetings as well. We hosted an electric bus demo here on site, where we had officials from TARC, Tank, and CARTA come and check out some of the next generation of electric vehicles. So that was an interesting event that we also held in March. So some really good news in terms of ridership. We're starting to see a little bit of a tick up. I think this month was possibly one of the best months that we've had in the past year in terms of you know, comparison to where we would want to be in our average. So you see a funny little red dot here, and we talked last month about wanting to see kind of where we stood as we moved through the months, you know, the prior year where we were in the pandemic. So that we're going to start a trend there with that red dot of what happened in the previous year. So that was March of 2020. It probably won't stay red next month as we see the trend develop out. I just wanted something to draw your attention to it's going to look a little bit different moving forward. So March 2021, we were a little bit below where we were in March 2020. Again, we had half the month before everything sort of shut down last year. But again, we're getting a little bit closer to the average of where we were before the pandemic. Paratransit is maybe it bounced back a little bit stronger in March. We were pretty close to right on where we were last year, and again catching back up with that the expectation of the average. And here is how we see that percent change relative to monthly average. Paratransit, we jumped back a little quicker, but again in fixed route, this really was one of the strongest months that we've had, in the past year. So things are looking up in terms of ridership and productivity. It sort of reflects that, but again, it's more of the same that we've seen throughout the past year. Total ridership is about 1.8 million compared to 3.3 last year, so we're right there, a little bit better than half, and that sort of filters through in paratransit as well. Revenue miles and hours, we're starting to catch back up again with the May service improvements. We're going to get closer to full service as we were before the pandemic, so that should, be a little bit more, increase a little bit more moving forward. Productivity, trips per mile per hour, fairly stable, steady. So again, things are looking up a little bit with ridership. We'll see if this is a trend that can continue. Again, we had the February with the weather that sort of, put a damper on things a little bit, but March looked really, really good. So hopefully that's not it's not an outlier, and we can see that trend continue moving forward. On the safety side, our preventable accidents was up just a touch, but still for the fiscal year 2021, we're doing really well. Injury frequency rate the same. So things are about where we would expect them to be. No preventable accidents on paratransit. That's always a good note to share. Days of lost time and workers' compensation claims, again, those are trending a little bit higher because of the injury frequency rate. But again, things are, I don't know if we're out of the realm of reasonable at this point, but I know John is keeping a close eye on all things safety related. On the maintenance side of the house, we are still perfect in preventive maintenance inspections, so 403 in a row for this fiscal year. And our miles between row calls is at about 6,600, and that's trending pretty closely with where we've been throughout the year so far. Got a couple of quick notes on the May service improvements. We did our public comment, and we want to share with the board. Nothing really changed from what we heard from the public. This is one of those cases where when we don't hear a lot of things, we would like to hear, this is great, we love it. Sometimes we don't exactly get that feedback, but we didn't hear anything negative either. So we'll likely move forward with these, and that again is the Route 12 adjustments on Leestown Road to catch Antique Drive on the outbound, Opportunity Way on the inbound, those minor scheduling tweaks for on-time performance. Route 8 would now serve the airport in Keeneland. We'll resume Route 24, and then note at the bottom that these service changes didn't meet the threshold of what we call a major service change under our Title VI program. And some information that came from our finance committee when we were looking at transit facilities and amenities. This is a map of our current shelter and bench locations. So we've got about 100 shelters in the system and about around 70 benches. The finance committee directed us to look at, really expanding how many shelters and benches we have in the city. So this is the first sort of, how this project is going to take shape. We look at what we've got, and those bench locations, there's about 70 bench locations. Those are the ones that we think that we can focus on to add shelters. And that makes some sense on a couple different levels. One, our threshold for adding a shelter is 25 boardings per weekday. To add a bench is 15 boardings per weekday. So we already know that these stops have a certain ridership threshold. There's some work been done there already, so that we're less likely to run into grading issues or other sort of built environment issues. And again, it's not, we'll consider other stops as well, but this is the first sort of step towards what we can do to expand our on-street facilities and amenities. So combining that with what we've already planned for ramp, we were looking at about 7 shelters in the ramp program, and that was through a grant award for accessibility, for ADA accessibility. We're thinking with some of the additional funds that the Finance Committee has suggested, we might be able to double that for next year, and that would get us to 14, 15 shelters. I think that's an ambitious goal, but something that if we, you know, I think it's a reasonable goal. Again, that is in addition to the boarding pads, sidewalk connections, and other things that the ramp program is still trying to work through. So that would just be in addition to what we're already shooting for, if that. And again, we'll come back with more specifics as we continue to work through the priority list of stops to make sure that the program makes, you know, sense across the city, sense with what we already have. So we're not quite there yet with all the exact specifics, but this, you know, thinking about where the bench locations are now, that's our first really pass at what makes sense to add a shelter. So I'm happy to take any questions about ramp or anything else in the performance report.
Christian, I'd just like to say something about the ramp and some of the conversation in the Finance Committee. I mean, it's been something that we've been trying to push on for a while, and now that we have some of the funding that's available to, you know, actually, you know, make some of these improvements, and we felt it was important that we do so, and we plan to do so moving forward in future years as well. And we believe that, you know, these shelter locations and the bench locations are, you know, very visible in the community, and, you know, something that could show more people that, you know, we're taking, you know, their property tax dollars and making improvements for the entire system.
George and Fred, as I recall the conversation, we weren't talking about doubling 7 to 14. We were talking, I thought we meant 100 to 200, adding 100 shelters.
And
the cost of that.
That's going to take a little bit more time and
but
capacity.
I believe that's what we spoke about.
Yeah.
Yeah, so we're talking to Rick about doubling the dollars expended, so from 75,000 to 150,000.
I know, but that's not how I remember it.
Okay.
I know what I suggested was we double the number from 100 to 200. But I guess I mean, that's what I stated, and that's what I meant in the conversation.
You did, Rick. Would it be fair to say that this is an incremental step to get us there? Would that be fair?
No.
No.
I think we should look at what it would cost to put in 100.
In a year, Rick, or in general?
Double the number of stops as soon as possible, like within the next year or 2 years. But that's our project. Double the number of stops.
Yeah, I'd be interested in seeing that dollar figure as well.
I think it'd be great to put in as many shelters as we can. But Fred, were you posing this is what we wanted to try to accomplish by the end of this year? Is that what you're posing here?
This would be the next fiscal year.
So within the next fiscal year. And so, you know, I'm for trying to get in as many as we can before the end of the next fiscal year. And of course, overall, but we would want to, you know, full recognition that we have to deal with contractors and permits and things of that nature. And, you know, timelines are what they are. And just so that, you know, somebody can answer this question at any point, but when we put in these shelters, do we have plans for recycling and trash receptacles? And if so, who's responsible for maintaining those? Because I think, I see a lot of waste around some bus stops, and if we're going to invest in these, if there's a way that we can put some funds around encouraging people to or making it easier for people to be responsible with their waste.
Yes, we do have trash receptacles when we put a shelter in, and that is typically the responsibility of Lextran to service. And so, we do think of total capacity when we're talking about shelters of how many we have, staff time it takes to service, again, lead time for manufacturing, for doing permit work. If anything has design work, that's an additional, it's additional length of time that it takes to work through those issues. So yeah, we can certainly expand this further, come back with some sense of cost and what kind of push it's going to take to get us there.
What I remember is we didn't talk about any particular timeline on building this. We simply wanted the cost of adding 100 shelters. And that's how Jill remembers it too.
We'll take that, Rick. We'll get you that.
Right. Yeah.
And Fred and Jill, if I remember correctly, this is really rough math. You said it's about $10,000 per shelter. So times 100 shelters, just really rough math. We're looking at $1 million.
I would estimate that up a little bit, because when we get into some of the more difficult shelters, it's going to take more in-depth design work, and we could spend easily 15 to 20 grand in design work alone if there's significant grade issues or drainage issues or those kinds of things. If I were going to put an average on this, I would maybe say more 15 grand each, so 1.5, probably north of 1.5 million.
That's what I was going to add also. Right when he said that, it's about between $1 million and 1.5 at least.
And then, that's not considering the extra manpower that we might have to have in our maintenance department to make sure we can service everything. So there's other considerations as well that we're going to have to work through, and we can come back with more information on the package to get us there.
Thanks, Fred. I apologize if there's feedback. I'm going to try to stay mute as much as possible. But are there any other questions or comments on this piece? We'll move to financials.
Thank you very much.
Thank you, Fred.
Okay, we'll get switched over with our screens here. That is not the screen I wanted. Okay, thank you, Alan.
Nikki, could you make, or whoever is displaying, could you make it a little bit bigger?
Is that better?
Yes, thank you.
Okay. These are our financials for the period ending March 31st, 2021. I can't believe there's only 3 months left in the fiscal year. It's seems like we just started this fiscal year. Our operating cash at this time looks good. This is due to what we talked about in the past with the CARES funding. You will see this go down a little bit on the April financials because we have just purchased our new buses, our new CNG Gillig buses that arrived 2 weeks ago. So you will see that go down a little bit. Everything else is pretty normal. We're very pleased right now with the balance sheet. I'll be glad to answer any questions if you have any questions on that. Okay, switching over to the next page. Maybe. I think everybody's having technical difficulties this morning. Okay. Our property taxes are right about where we expected it to be. We have collected about 300,000 more than what we did this time last year, so we're pleased with that. Our passenger revenue has picked up a little bit from where it was in February, so we collected about 76,000 in the month of March. Our federal funds, of course, that's what I mentioned with the CARES funding and our regular grant funding. Our expenses are still under budget. The areas, if you'll notice, the wages are a little bit over budget. That's because we had 3 payrolls in March, and so that will even itself out over the next couple of months. Everything else is under budget. Our paratransit expenses have picked up a little bit. Of course, they're not where they were pre-COVID, but they did pick up a little bit for the month of March. And everything else is running really well. We're very pleased at this time with the way that the expenses are going. Does anyone have any questions? Okay. Jill, I will turn it over to you for the budget presentation.
Nikki, I will ask you, do you have the budget open that you could?
I have it in the PowerPoint, and I also have it in the resolution.
The PowerPoint. I didn't have that queued up from running back upstairs. So I'll let you drive if that's okay.
Okay.
All right. Well, thank you all. While Nikki's pulling that up, I will just cue us up. It is that time of year when we present to the board our FY22 operating budget and a capital plan for the next year. Generally, we start with a little bit of highlights from the previous year and in review there. And as we always start our presentations with our mission statement, we serve people and our community with mobility solutions, and try to keep that at the heart of all of the decisions that we make. Wanted to run through some highlights for 2021. Lextran was awarded the $5.2 million in Coronavirus Response and Relief Supplemental Appropriations Act of 2021, also known as CRRSA, for the reimbursement of operating expenses with an emphasis on payroll. That award was in January of 2021. That same month at our board meeting, we approved the radio partnership with LFUCG. That will start in the coming months. In February, we paid Fifth Third. We paid off the loan in full for this headquarters project. So we did that at the direction of the Finance Committee and the board. So we got that off our books. Because we presented this presentation at our Finance Committee meeting about 2 weeks ago, this says our FTA site visit for our triennial review is scheduled for April 2021, and I will tell you that we had that review yesterday with our FTA reviewers. Things look good for that, and when we get that final report, we will share that with the board. I believe the date that they said we would have a final report is in June. We have offered service to the Keeneland Spring Meet this month in some ways to accommodate many of the employees that are working there, and also some of the guests at the meet. You will recall that last year, with the onset of COVID, the airport Keeneland route was one that was temporarily suspended, and until now, there has not been a lot of need for that route to be reinstated. But we did resume service to Keeneland this month. We have our service improvements that Mr. Combs spoke about earlier, slated to begin on May 16th of this year. And finally, the American Rescue Plan of 2021 was signed by President Biden in March, for which Lextran received an allocation of $14 million. Eligible projects for Lextran we are still determining, but we anticipate that many of those uses will be similar to previous COVID relief bills with operational expenses. We originally were led to believe that the funds had to be expended by September 2024. We now know that they have to be obligated to a project. So a project may not be completed at that time, but that is when you have to obligate them to a project. That's some some of the FTA lingo of how their systems work. As we look ahead to FY 2022 for the budget that we are discussing today, we have labor contract negotiations. So we expect to have a new labor contract. Following this meeting, we have an in-person session of labor negotiations later today. Our current management contract expires October 2021. We have our transit center project in conjunction with Town Branch that we have been speaking about for a couple of years. We have programmed some money into our capital plan to show our commitment to that project so that we can get that completed. We anticipate recommendations from our comprehensive operations analysis, which is taking place right now. We have our ramp phase 2, which Mr. Combs spoke about earlier, which is rider amenities in many places. That's the addition of shelters and benches throughout the city. We have our Advancing Innovations in Mobility project that Mr. Combs gave an update on a couple of months ago. That is some of the on-demand service in conjunction with UK. We have our canopy design and construction project, which recently kicked off. Our New Markets tax credit transaction dissolves in March of 2022. Is that correct, Nikki? Thank you. This budget, we have not budgeted an increase for fuel costs, and that is similar to what some other transit agencies are doing. So we've been paying attention to the fuel cost there, and we anticipate increasing the number of bus shelters at our stops throughout the city. And we're going to shift into Nikki's expertise versus mine, so I will probably let her drive and speak now to the specific line items. Thank you, Nikki.
Thank you, Jill. This is our operating budget. We show you the FY 2020 draft budget. We show the FY 2021 budget and then what we are projecting to end this year at. And then we also show you the FY 2020 actual budget. So you'll have a comparison there. Our property taxes, we've put in an increase of about 2 to 2.5% there. It seems steady from what we've received in the last 2 years. Pre-COVID, we had gotten up to about 3% for a few years, but it was suggested to go with about 2 to 2.5% for this next year. Our federal funding is, of course, more than we budgeted due to the CARES money. This budget does not reflect the $14 million that Jill mentioned because when this budget was put together, we didn't know about that. So that's why it's not reflected in here. And then we will have more information, but like she said, we assume that it will be very similar to the CARES money and the CRISA funding, which was given to transit agencies to focus on payroll needs and operations to keep transit agencies from having to lay people off and things like that. So we're very, very happy with that. Our passenger fares, of course, we're trying to recover from the last year with our ridership and our passenger fares. So we're budgeting obviously lower than what we did in FY 2021, but we hope to pick up some, as Fred mentioned in his KPI report. March ridership did look much better, so we'll keep our fingers crossed for that one. Advertising revenue, it will stay the same. That's due to a contract. Miscellaneous revenue is things like our vending machine revenue. We get a certain percentage of the vending machine. There's also fuel tax. We pay fuel taxes and we get a small percentage of that back. Our revenue from Lextran Foundation, this has to do with the New Markets tax credits transaction. This is where we pay the lease payment, and since it will dissolve this year, the lease is much lower than it has been. And we have not had, as of this, when this budget was done, we had not had any information at all from the state. We're hoping to have some kind of state funding to help out with the loss of toll credits, but at this time we do not know what that is. So we had this budget at zero because we had no information. Our expenses has a small increase in there for things such as professional services, that's some of our contract maintenance and some of the engine rebuilds that you've done resolutions for, some of those items. Materials and supplies, majority of that 1.2, I think 900,000 of that is bus parts. So there are cleaning supplies and things like that in there. Fuel and oil, as Jill mentioned, we did leave fuel at $2.20 a gallon. It has been running very steady for the past few months. So with research that I've done and speaking with other transit agencies, we feel pretty comfortable with that. But as you know, fuel is one of those moving targets that's kind of hard to predict. Everything else in here is some of our smaller expenses, but we're very pleased with the budget. So I'll be glad to take any questions that you may have.
Thanks, Nikki. I have a quick question about the new federal dollars. Is that is the expectation? So I remember the first $5 million from last year having very kind of strict rules around appropriate use. Do we expect those to be broadened, or is it sort of similar? I know we're waiting on actual guidance, but what's the expectation?
What we've seen so far is it's very similar to the other two grants. They are designed for payroll expenses to keep from laying off staff, and also to help with fringe benefits to keep staff at the same level that they're at, and also operating expenses that would help with fuel and paratransit costs and things like that. So we think it's, from what we've seen so far, it's just about the exact same rules as the other two grants.
The primary intent seems to be to help agencies keep service on the street. There are some rules of how you might be able to designate that towards a capital project, but seem pretty strict, and you would also have to get, I think, some concurrence from your FTA regional office. So that's something that we would need to explore a little bit more.
What we'll probably end up with, we will end up with a lot of cash, right? It's like free money in many ways.
It will free up some of our property taxes to be able to do other projects and to provide the local match for our capital projects. Okay, are there any other questions on the operating budget?
Yeah, I'd like to say something.
Yes.
Pardon me, Rick. I didn't hear you.
Go ahead. I had a question.
I'm not sure if others are experiencing this, but I keep seeing an orange exclamation point over Rick, indicating low bandwidth. So I think he's having some connectivity issues. And then, George, I also heard you start to ask a question, and then your audio cut out. So I'm not.
No, I just stopped because Rick was starting to talk.
Oh, okay.
But
well timed.
So I just wanted to tell the rest of the board that, at the finance committee meeting, we spent a lot of time going through all these line items and felt pretty comfortable. Now, one thing that I questioned and now I don't feel as comfortable on is, do we have enough expense in for paratransit? And, I questioned it at the meeting, and, Nikki, based on what she knew at the time, felt it was the appropriate amount. And, looking at what Fred's, chart showed, it kind of makes me think that maybe that's going to come back faster than we think. So just want to put that as a point of caution on here.
Thank you for that.
Rick, did you?
I think Jamie had her hand up at one point.
Oh, okay.
It was the same paratransit question, given the recent history we've seen the past month.
The actual expenses for 2020 were 5.4 million. So we don't feel that it will go over that, but it could get close. And like you said, it may come back quicker than we expect. But when we've talked to them and all the research that we've done at the time, 5.2 was our best guess at the time for that. So
I just saw Rick pop back up. Do you want to?
Nikki,
yes,
am I reading this right? This budget, if it's perfect, we will generate an extra $5 million of cash.
correct. That will go towards our that will go in our mass transit fund, and that will go towards our local match on the capital budget.
It's going to generate $5 million of cash. And what's the depreciation that we normally would stick in there?
$2 million a year.
So this budget is actually a surplus budget. I don't know if I've seen one before.
It's mostly due to the timing of the way the grants fell with the last CRISA grant that came out in February, March. We're able to draw down extra federal funds, which we'll be able to use in the next few fiscal years. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
This gives you.
Okay,
sorry.
Rick, your sound is
the 14 million.
Rick, I'm sorry I didn't hear your question, but if your question was about the 14 million, this does not include the 14 million.
Rick, we can see you talking, but we cannot hear you.
Rick.
I'm sorry, Rick. I think you're cutting out. I'll be glad to answer any questions with email if you can't get back connected with us.
I don't know if you can get to the chat box on your phone. It helps for me to call in using the call-in number as well. Sorry about that, Rick.
Oh, my point is we will have more cash a year from now than we have now.
Yes.
Right.
Yes, because the 14 million will be stretched over.
Well, even without the 14 million, I'm saying discounting the 14 million, we will still have more cash a year from now, substantially more.
Yes.
Right. Okay. Just so we put those in perspective when we talk about a project to add more shelters. We have lots of money.
Okay. If you look at our operating revenue, this just gives you a big picture of how much property tax revenue we have. We're very grateful to the taxpayers in Fayette County for the property tax. I have seen some other transit agencies I've been in touch with over the past year, and they have occupational taxes and sales tax, and they have been in a much worse position than we have. So we are very thankful for our property taxes. Our federal funding this year will take up about close to 30% of our budget, and then we have our other smaller revenues. But this just gives you kind of a big picture of how important our property tax revenue is. Okay. I think this is the day for technical difficulties. I'm having trouble going to the next page. Oh, okay. This is the big picture of our expenses. Of course, being providing service in the community, wages and fringe takes up almost 60% of our budget. Paratransit expenses, almost 20% of our budget. And then we have our smaller items, professional services, our fuel obviously is an important part. But this gives you an idea of where the majority of the expenses go. Okay, this is our 5-year capital plan. We talked a lot about this at the Finance Committee. We have talked about bus purchases and shelters and all kinds of good stuff that we have included in this capital plan. We did put in the FY 2022, we did put $150,000 in federal funds for shelters. Anything above and beyond that would be local funds. But we did put that in for the next 2 years to focus more on some of those. We also have our canopy project the grant was awarded in previous years, but we have not finished that project, so that carries over. Any grant funding that does not get spent in 1 year flows over to the next year. So that's what we've done here with FY 2021. We have some of our projects you all have approved some resolutions for. Obviously, our IT project that we've been talking about and our radio system. We're very glad we've had this radio system on this budget for capital plan for about 4 years. So we're finally glad that we're able to move forward with that. But this shows, the top shows the projects, the bottom shows what grant funds that comes from. And then the bottom line down there, the local share for mass transit, shows how much federal or local share that we will have to put in for those grants. Most grants are 80% federal, 20% local. We do have some buses that will be purchased with Volkswagen settlement funding. I don't know if you're familiar with that, but there was a Volkswagen settlement due to some electric vehicles related issues that they had. So we have been awarded some funds for that. It flows through the state, and that is a 50% or 50% match, federal and 50% local. So you will see that when we do that grant, the local match for that is a little bit higher. So anyone have any questions on the capital plan? Okay. That is the end of the budget presentation, and I will turn it back over to you, Jill.
All right. Thank you, Nikki. I appreciate you always having the answers. I know Mr. Ward has told you that many, many times, but that is very helpful to me as well. We have a resolution here for approval of the FY 2022 operating budget as presented here today.
The regular packet is gone, so I can't pull up the resolutions.
Alan, if you are still connected, is there a way you can assist with that?
There we go.
Thank you. All right. This is Resolution 2021-05, a resolution to approve the fiscal year 2022 budget. You see the total operating budget at $33 million with the capital budget of 10.5 for FY 2022. This includes expected revenues from federal sources, including 5307 for capital maintenance and paratransit expenses, representing a transfer of 21% and 20% from the capital budget, respectively, over to the operating budget. I would request that the board adopt the FY 2022 budget, representing a strong commitment to our community for service and improvements in public transportation and mobility solutions. But I do not think I'm the one that can call for a motion, but that is what I would present.
Is there a motion to approve this resolution?
Yeah, this is George. I make a motion to approve.
Second.
Harding, I'll second.
Second.
You get that?
Yes.
All in favor, say aye.
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 Anyone opposed? Motion carries. The budget. We'll go to
All
the next
right.
one.
Thank you.
Thank you, everybody, Budget Committee, for your work.
Yes, thank you to the members of the Finance Committee. I know that you serve on the Finance Committee, and that is an additional spend of your time, and I appreciate that for the various times that we meet throughout the year, but obviously the budget, of course. So thank you for that additional service, and thank you, George, for your chairmanship of that committee.
Yeah, you're welcome. And I also appreciate how easy that you and Nikki and everyone that puts the budget together makes it on us to be able to go through and then, to field all the questions that we have. And just for the board members, again, that aren't on that committee, we spend a lot of time on it, and there are a lot of questions asked. So, it's thoroughly vetted.
Thank you, George.
Thank you. Moving on to Resolution 2021-06. This is a bit, this isn't something new, but it is more of just a language change and a small update. This is a resolution to approve the public records custodian and a small change that is in a policy that exists now. So the existing bylaws for the Lextran Board of Directors, Article 9 establishes rules and regulations relating to the access of public records pursuant to KRS 61.876. So those rules were adopted by resolution in 2014 to outline all those rules and regulations. The resolution that is presented to you here today requests an update and one addition to the language contained in the rules. The language currently identifies me as the Director of Community Affairs, so 2 job titles ago, as the official custodian. It also lists our address as 109 West Loudon as the location where someone can make a request, and outlines a fee of 10 cents per page. The resolution presented before you today will update the language to reflect a change in my title, list our proper address as 200 West Loudon Avenue, and will add a fee for the option of receiving files electronically via a flash drive. I've also attached the prior resolution for you for reference if you would like to see that. I've also attached the actual rules and regulations as they will be updated for you today. I'm happy to answer any questions that you might have about that.
Any questions? No, we'll get a motion.
Move to accept
Is there a
the
motion?
resolution to approve the public records custodian changes as noted.
Thanks, Adrian. Is there a second?
This is Harding. I'll second.
Okay.
It's Harding. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Anyone opposed? That motion carries. We can move to the next.
All right. Thank you, board members. Moving on, Resolution 2021-07 is requesting the board's requesting authority to enter into a contract for the purchase of electric buses and chargers for Lextran's revenue vehicle fleet. I do want to clarify there is no dollar figure attached to this resolution today, but this resolution allows us to enter into a contract to make those purchases when that time comes. Any purchase that happens would come back to the board for approval by resolution at that time. Lextran worked with a few other transit agencies to gain more competitive pricing and reduce some administrative overhead for a single procurement for transit buses. The agencies involved, aside from Lextran, were the Transit Authority of Northern Kentucky, the Transit Authority of River City and Louisville, Chattanooga, Tennessee, and the Southern Ohio Regional Transit Authority, also known as Metro, in Cincinnati, Ohio. Lextran served as the lead agency on this procurement, and the combined evaluation committee consisted of representatives from all the different agencies. We received 3 qualified responses, and the evaluation committee ranked Gillig as the highest proposer. We are requesting your authority today to enter into contract for the purchase of electric buses, and the details are contained in the resolution before you for 2021-07. This contract will allow Lextran to purchase at least 2 and as many as 18 buses over the term of the contract for 5 years, depending upon the availability of those funds.
Thanks, Jill. I have a quick question just about the logistics of this kind of procurement opportunity. Can you just say a little bit more about, is this common practice? How is it helpful? What is our role? I saw that we were the lead, I think.
Lextran was the lead agency. And so there are things called joint procurements, and then there are things called piggybacks. And what we don't do very often is a piggyback. A joint procurement is more common. If Stephanie Hoke is on the call today, she works a lot more with our procurement, so I want to have her ready if you have any questions. But in full disclosure, this is a procurement that the process, I guess, of developing this joint resolution probably started almost a year ago. And what we found here at Lextran was we weren't able to gain as competitive of pricing when we just needed to buy, a one-off purchase of an electric bus here or there. And kind of the same with Louisville or Northern Kentucky. Northern Kentucky actually doesn't have any electric buses at this time, but should they want the opportunity to purchase, this gives them a contract and a means to do so. And also gives us the opportunity that if funding is available, we can move that process along a little bit faster, if you will, for us or for any of the other agencies involved, that we don't have to issue another RFP to buy what might just be one bus. Stephanie, do you have anything to add, or perhaps Nikki?
Yes, I can add. The process for this, as you asked if it was common, it is extremely common. We actually did this on our previous Gillig contract for the CNG buses. Tank was the lead agency for that, and this one, we were the lead agency. So it allows a lot of different transit agencies to be able to come together to, like Jill said, pretty much get a cheaper cost, because if we only bought, 5 or 6 buses, our cost would be much higher. So it is a very common thing in transit agencies.
Thanks, Nikki. Yeah, I had just one more question just on electric buses. I believe the last time I saw the stat, we had maybe 7 lower no emission vehicles.
We have 6.
And where would that sit? We have 6. 6. Excuse me.
Right now we have 6. We do have. I'm getting some feedback, so I'm going to pause for a second. We have 6 currently. We have 2 that are in the production schedule, and that those are in production with Gillig, and those should go on the production line, I believe, within the month, maybe 2. So we will be receiving those within the coming months, and that will put us at a total of 8. Right now, we have funding for 3 more, but beyond that, additional purchases are to be determined.
Thanks, Jill. Anyone else have questions? If not, is there a motion on this item?
George, motion to approve.
Is there a second?
Adrian, a second.
Thanks, Adrian. All in favor say aye.
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 Anyone opposed? That motion carries.
All right, thank you, board members. I have a lot of action items today. Our next resolution is Resolution 2021-08, and this requests the board's authority to award a contract for the purchase of radios and maintenance of those radios. We issued an RFP earlier this year in March with proposals received at the beginning of April. A staff evaluation committee reviewed and ranked those proposals for compliance and responsiveness. We received 2 qualified proposals, and the evaluation committee ranked those and is recommending an award to AMK Services based on their ranking and prices that they included. This includes the purchase of some radios that are outlined for you. in the resolution and some included price sheets. In hindsight, I am sorry that we included that as part of the board packet. It was humongous and wish I had done that as an appendix, but lessons learned. We won't do that differently moving forward. So the total purchase value at this time is $194,667.70. The term of this contract will be for 2 years with an optional 1-year extension. The source of these funds are a federal $5,307 with a local mass transit match of 20%. And I would be happy to entertain any questions that I can answer or the staff can answer about this resolution.
Any questions? Now we'll get a motion on this resolution.
Jamie Rogers, motion to.
Go for it, Jamie.
Jamie Rogers
with the motion
to approve. Yep.
You can jump in there on the second if you want. Harding.
I guess. Harding, I'll second. Yeah.
All in favor, say aye.
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 Anyone opposed? That motion carries.
All right. Thank you, board members. Appreciate that. Yesterday, I sent you a resolution via email that advised you that that would be a walk-on resolution for today after consulting with Christian, of course, to make sure that was all right. So as I mentioned earlier, yesterday we had our Fta Triennial review, or site visit rather. This is normal process that happens in advance of them issuing a draft report or a final report and allows you to identify any areas where you may need updates and avoid any findings on your triennial review. One area that they identified for us was within our drug and alcohol-free workplace policy. They have identified 2 pieces of language that needed to be added to that policy, and if we are able to pass that by resolution today, we can send that to them and avoid a finding in our actual triennial report. So I have included the 2 pieces of language that would be added to that policy, advising that employees must abide by the terms of this policy and what employees are to do if they are convicted of a drug or alcohol-related violation. Previously, the board adopted by resolution the Kentucky Drug-Free Workplace Certification in 2009, and this is part of that. Obviously, as you know, a policy against drug and alcohol use in the workplace is mandated by Federal Transit Administration and the U.S. Department of Transportation. So we would request the board's approval or adoption of the drug and alcohol-free workplace policy, which was attached for you within the resolution. And happy to answer any questions that you might have about that.
Take questions if you have them. If not, we'll get a motion here. Will there be one?
This is Harding. I'll move to approve.
Is there a second?
It was Adriana, second.
All in favor, say aye.
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 Is anyone opposed? That motion carries.
Thank you, board members. That concludes our action items and resolutions today.
Did we get bus chargers? Did we do that one?
I'm sorry. Yes, that was the contract for electric buses and chargers. That I only spoke about buses, but that contract does allow us to purchase chargers as well.
Just make sure
Sorry.
we missed one.
No, I'm sorry about that. That was my oversight. The next thing we have for you here today is a change order report, and this is being reported for information only. No action is required today. We have 2 items on the change order report, and one is related to our contract with Goodyear for our tire lease. We needed to add a change of $20,000 to the total contract to add the tires for our new electric buses that I mentioned earlier are coming in a couple of months. These tires are a slightly different size than what was included in the original contract, so we did not have that included in the total price before, and that was about $20,000 that is outlined here. Our second item is with our contractor Zeit Energy for the CNG fueling station maintenance and monitoring for a total of $33,000. The original contract with Zeit included design build services for the CNG fueling station. The contract only had one time period specified in it, and that time period was 5 years, dated June 10th, 2016. However, no monitoring could start until the station was built and constructed. So this change order just clarifies and adds 6 months to our contract with them to complete the 6-month monitoring period through December 31st of this year. Again, for a total of $33,000. So that will get us through this year. We will be releasing an RFP for fuel station maintenance and monitoring later this year. So again, those are for information only. Thank you.
Thanks, Jill. And no old business or new business. I see the proposed agenda items here. I believe.
Mr. Motley, we will also need to add as a proposed agenda item an update to our procurement policies. That is also in conjunction with our Fta Triennial. They identified some language that we would need to update there, and so we will have to bring that before the board.
Thanks, Jill. With that, I think we wrap up our agenda, unless there are any additional thoughts or discussion. Thank you for this meeting, Jill. I apologize for the chaos of whatever side. I can't hear any feedback, so thank y'all for flagging that my phone was giving some feedback. We'll get those tech issues on my end handled for our next meeting. I just want to say thank you again for that, recognizing the Lextran team members. I mean, it was just really powerful, and it's easy. It's important to remember the role that our operators play out in community.
Absolutely, we train them for those situations, but they don't often encounter them.
Thanks again, Jill. With that, is there a motion to adjourn this meeting?
George, motion.
Is there a second?
Harding, second.
Before I call for the vote, just another quick thank you to the Finance Committee on this budget. Looking forward to the presentation to the council. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Anyone opposed? All right. That motion carries. Thank you, everybody. Welcome again, Byron. We'll talk soon.
Thank you.
Thank you all.
So long.
Thank you. Have a good day.